So Keith, thanks so much for spending time with me today.
Of course.
So let's kind of start at the beginning. Why moldings?
Yeah, finishing a home with molding was purely functional at first. If you don't finish the interior, you have a lot of drafting, right? There's a lot of drafted air moving through the house, and also to finish off the irregularities that happen in construction. Something you might well know as the builder's secret, when you ideally think that the room is square and everything is perfectly plumb. It's not necessarily the case, and so the best way to finish off corners and edges is to add on various forms of molding.
But it evolved from there.
It did indeed, very much so.
Why all the varied patterns? They're so diverse.
Yeah, first of all was functionally, what was happening in the environment of that particular climate, what was happening in the temperament of society, what was an aesthetic popularity. Those things started becoming something of a vernacular in various regions across the United States. And that's inspired by human creativity and how trend and society communicate what might be defined as beautiful at any given time in history. For example, there is a look at the Victorian, which is so grand, and the bungalow, which is so simple. And then there's this other set of intellectuals who have beautiful skills with their hands, looking to make homes very lovely without doing the same thing you'd experience in a Victorian home. And that's where the Craftsman style came from and why it's even named that. It was really honoring the work of the hand of the master who knew how to carve wood well. We were inventing new ways to house people affordably and beautifully in these large, towering Victorian homes. But the craftsman was starting to see a removal of business from their hands. They were spending hours crafting beautiful things carved by their own hands. They were being replaced by machinery. And there was an intellectual aesthetic, and there was also kind of a grassroots movement of craftsmen who were feeling like we're being obsolete. And they were seeing the beautiful carving that they were used to doing for hundreds of years being left out, and they felt there's something wrong with this idea of mass production. And so alongside that idea, they were embracing nature. And so there's this mix of how can we embrace nature and reduce and refine all the obscenity of the opulent Victorian style, but do it in a way that's filled with craftsmanship and not just reduced for the sake of affordability.
And so, speaking of that, how would we know we're in a craftsman home?
A craftsman home, it has some reductionary style to it, so it's not opulent like Victorian, but it's not going to be as simplified as what you'd see in a faux Victorian, or what we have around here a lot is this simplified bungalow, affordable housing style. So you would see generally they would plane their millwork simply without a lot of ornamentation, again, because they're rebelling against the opulence of Victorian era. But there's still some fine craftsmanship about it that when you step into a craftsman home, you sense, I feel special. Somebody really attended to this space. It feels simple. I don't feel like overwhelmed with design, but I feel like somebody really cared about how this was put together. And you see that tailoring with leaded glass windows and just the right proportions on case goods that are wrapped around fireplaces and doors and windows and staircases and railings. Very lovely, tailored taste, which again is very appealing to the general culture of a Seattle resident. We don't generally prefer very opulent style here, and it was just born in us from that very practical standpoint of surviving out here and then building simply. That was also part of the new movement as population was expanding to create an aesthetic that was appealing to growing families, healthy families and healthy communities.
The last thing that comes to mind is that you might find a lot of similar elements between the bungalow and the craftsman, so you might be sort of not one or the other, but some mixture.
A little bit of both. I see. You definitely see a mix here, for sure.
So the larger, the more opulent, the fancier, down to the back to the 700 square foot
Precisely.
bungalow that's very, very simple.
For sure. And you'll see now, today, people who will choose, really. And that's what's beautiful about having this design showroom, is that they can step in and go, oh, I see that flat stock. I don't really like that. Oh, hey, look over here. This one has an interesting little crown detail on the top of my flat stock that gives it just enough extra that would be fine in taste without going overboard, or whatever it might be. People will reinvent their spaces, but they can do it very tastefully because we have lovely story to tell for them here. So as a designer, I'm very confident in what I would want to specify for the creation of the interior of a home. If I'm not, if I'm coming to Dunn Lumber like I should, how best would I be prepared? What should I bring with me to be able to know confidently that I'm going to be purchasing the right materials?
In the case of not really knowing what the style is, if we had some pictures of the outside of their home
Yeah.
and some interior pictures, and also some of the dimensions. We like to know the ceiling height,
Nice.
door height, so that we know kind of what we're working with, so that we can scale it to fit that customer's desires.
Right. It's important to see it and feel it and get a sense experientially in a three-dimensional environment how to put these things together.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.